10 years in Nigeria, you will possibly have as much co-working spaces you have here as possibly the entire Europe together.
But more important is how we come together to create an entirely new entity, and that's where the wholeness comes from.
Think beyond country, think beyond your borders. Know that anything that you do has a ripple effect, and that you can actually make a huge difference.
How people are going to work, going forward. We see that it's becoming more decentralized. So people are working from coffee shops.
Everyone can be anything they want to be. You can be an introvert, but you also are able to turn around to be an extrovert if you work hard at it.
So what are the different parts of this value chain that I can key into? What is my role in some of these parts, and what are the opportunities? So for us, we believe very strongly, for people here, and I believe you have the agenda, to follow the different speakers who will bring different perspectives, from Leanne to Franklin to pretty much the different panels that will come on, and they will bring different perspectives into this. There are entrepreneurs that are looking for funding. That there are people here who run platforms that are also connected to funds that you can get funding from through co-working spaces. So let's run through it. There are different factors that have led to the facilitation and demand for co-working spaces in Nigeria. We have the entrepreneurial energy of Nigerians generally. Somebody said Nigerians are born entrepreneurs. That we live and breathe entrepreneurship. You see a problem and something tells you can do something about it. But because of the environment that we're in, that isn't created for us to literally begin to solve those things, we find it's a challenge. So because of that, we're always seeking opportunities. I mean, I don't know. The reason why most people are here today is because, we've got the comments. People say, I'm just here to just see what the opportunities are. So the word opportunity, the big O, is on everybody's lips because we are entrepreneurial. And also there is a digitization going on. You have payment infrastructure, you have a new, the rise of e-commerce, social media usage all across Nigeria. And then you have foreign investment influence as well coming into Nigeria. So you have a lot of foreign interest in the space. And then also infrastructural gap. So I'll give you a story. Somebody asked, why did you even start a co-working space about 6 years ago? And it was simply because I'd come back to Nigeria trying to set up a business, and I went everywhere to look for office space, and the budget was just outrageous. So you find that the fund that you raise, you possibly sink about 60 to 70% of it on rent. And so we're hot desking across both from terra culture to different places until I spoke to a few people in that place and I said, hold on a second, what if we have our space and we all collaborate and co-share it? And we're like, well, is this something you would do? And people were like, well, let's look at it. Essentially born out of a need. So because of the infrastructural gap of power, lack of internet, the things that we know about, we're essentially setting up co-working spaces to bridge this gap. That is what has led to it. So it's moved from about 2011 when there were only 2 co-working spaces in Lagos. Only 2. Who can take a guess? Sorry? Correct. CC Hub and Vinia. So only 2, and started just about a couple of months from each other. So one is a full-fledged tech co-working space. The other is a hybrid co-working space. Literally means that every business end-to-end can work together in the same space. So from 2 to now, who can guess how many? I mean, if you've been reading the materials, you possibly know. How many do we have in Nigeria now? Well, in Lagos alone, 40 plus. In Nigeria, about 72. All across, and it goes from Lagos to Kano to Abuja, Port Harcourt, and Kwara, all across. And so this evolution is in 3 stages, because there was a time where you have what I like to call 1.0 offices. So these are offices they were just set up for people to come in, rooms and lots of rooms. So if I mention some companies that do it globally, you recognize them. So they were really not encouraging co-working. You only have one person in one room. Now you could have a large room full of 7, 8, 10, 15 entrepreneurs, or even 100 entrepreneurs. So you have serviced office, utilities, empty spaces, rent per square meters. You hear things like rent. In co-working space, you don't hear rent. You hear membership. You hear community. And then you then move to the second phase, which is shared spaces. So They moved from just open spaces to now breakout spaces that were just set up for people to share, and then open plan offices, flexible payments, infrastructures. Now to where we are today, which is the full-fledged co-working environment. And what does it have? It has the membership, which are people potentially that are sitting in this place. The community is really what keeps the co-working environment going. You know what the kind of conversations that people have with each other when you're sitting with somebody that is building something interesting, you're also building something. Those interactions they keep the conversation going around co-working, and that leads to collaboration because people are constantly interacting. It leads to collaboration, and then all of this is beyond cost and infrastructure because now people can collaborate. If you put a porter cabin somewhere and you put 10-15 people there, they will collaborate because it's now a community of porter cabin, if you know what I mean. So co-working has moved from just, or office spaces have moved from just a building or a number of square meters to now full-fledged collaborative environment. In this co-working 3.0, as I would like to call it, there are many moving parts, and this is where the opportunity is. If you miss anything, please don't miss what I'm about to say now. This is where you can fit in. This is where people have asked me that, okay, so what do I do? What part of this, what if I see this as a big cake, as it were, what part of this cake am I supposed to be crunching? What part of it? So I'll talk about prospecting, I'll talk about property selection, design, construction, fittings, equipment. This is all about setup. And then to operation. Basic operations to co-working operations to membership services to community management, and I'll break it down so that it's clear to everyone in terms of where you fall. Prospecting, this is market feasibility. Now there are people here who are consultants. So your job, for instance, as an opportunity is to say, look, this trend is likely going to be bigger in the next 10 years. The global statistics says that by 2020. 50% of the world's population will be entrepreneurs and freelancers. And that applies to Nigeria, by the way, more so even Nigeria, because there are even no jobs here. So it means that people are going to be freelancing more. People are going to be their own bosses. People are going to be writers. They're going to be speakers. They're going to be painters. They're going to be doing different things that are freelancing. So the first thing is to say that how do I, for instance, develop a strategy for some of these people in terms of how to operate? So that might be your own space. So we see consultants that will come out of this, business developers that will come out of this space under prospecting. Under property, now, it's always been said that co-working is not a real estate business. It's not a real estate business because you're not building a building somewhere and you're calling people to come and rent it. So it's not a rent, a payment for rent strategy. It is a platform that is set up for community building and collaboration. Therefore, there are people who will key into this, not necessarily from the traditional real estate mindset, but from property identification. So there are people who will specialize and say, you know what, I have a warehouse somewhere in Apapa or a warehouse somewhere in Abuja that it's been abandoned. Not your regular thing that you offer to a professional to come and take over. But because you see an opportunity in a co-working environment for that to be used. So there will be people who will own these spaces, who will list them. There will be opportunities to collaborate with some of these people. Structured environment that people that will find it. So therefore, the opportunity here is that you have real estate consultants, you have property owners who will be coming into partnerships with people who are dissecting the industry, who are creating these platforms. And then to this one, this is one of my favorite parts of this one. And I see quite a number of designers that I've spoken to in the last few months. I see a few familiar faces, Now, guys, the best part of every co-working space, especially in the physical infrastructure, is how it looks. You can enter a co-working environment. There's a guy here who I'll call him at the right time. I think he's sitting at that corner. He knows a thing or two about the design of an environment. And it tells you whether you should work here or not. People's productivity has been linked to the kind of environment that they work. How many know that? So there are people who are much more productive simply because of how they work. We selected some things that we want you to see because we just believe that these things will open up our minds to possibilities. I mean, if you've ever walked into a Google office, you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever walked into a well-designed, if you walk into Facebook campus, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't want to, if you came in and you didn't want to walk, you will walk. Because I mean, I give you a typical example of a Google office where everything you see is free. From the food, from to the water, to the gym, to every single thing that you're using is free. Could we possibly get to a point where we design a co-working space that everything you see, well, in Nigeria, you know, that everything you see in the fridge is free? You know, even now in some spaces, some people buy their lunch and put it in the fridge, and before they come back to come and get it, says, somebody has carried my food from the, you know, so you get that going on. But you know, maybe it's a possibility. But I need us to sort of open up our mind and see the possibility of this space in terms of what is possible. So design is, how do you design a space that has, you know, that has nice color combinations. You know, you could have pods, you could have people sitting in different spaces, you could have people working from a cocoon, you could have people wrapping themselves up in something that looks like an MRI machine, and because they just want to free their mind, you know. So I'm speaking to how many designers do we have in house? Can I see your hand? Okay, designers. So this is for you. So in terms of the future of the industry, we will be depending on you to think, in fact, not to think outside of the box, to take out the box completely, so that there is no box, and think of what hasn't even been done outside of Nigeria, and let's set a standard here that can be exported outside of here, instead of what is currently being done, which is get a picture outside of here and try to adopt it for this environment, because we have a very unique environment. I'm looking for a co-working space that will happen inside a Molue type structure. You know, because some people have never been inside a Molue. So if you have a Molue space, what would it look like? You know, will people rush to enter to walk inside as they used to back in the day? You know, so for people that don't understand Molue, let me try and explain it to some of our foreign guests. Okay, maybe too late. So basically, it's now scrap your BRT buses, but there was a time in Nigeria when to get a bus from one point to another, you've got to fight. You don't fight, you don't travel. I mean, it was a battle. It was you know, people used to. It was you show your fitness in Lagos by how well you can catch a bus. It was that serious. You know, so please understand that there are designs that would have to be Nigerian in nature. There are designs that will have to take Lagos or Kano or Kaduna structure and use the old sort of like old sort of mod style thing to build. So this is for designers. See your space and see the ambience, layout, general aesthetics, color scheme. And so designers of course will work with architects who may be designers or not, and then interior designers who would then do the work of what's actually going on in there. Then next one is the construction itself. Sometimes some architects are also construction experts, so they can also oversee the work. So engineering works, development team, and all of that work with construction. And fittings, you have furniture, the activities here, furniture, lighting, generator, inverter, because this is Nigeria. There are factors that we have to contend with here that you possibly don't think about if you do what you do in Nigeria as a co-working. How many operators do we have in-house already? Can I see your hand if you're here? Operators, okay, I can see two, okay, quite a number of people. So now, there are things that you deal with. You possibly run 2 generators, one main one backup, and then you possibly have inverter on top of it, and then you're then on the grid. But most times you're actually not on the grid, because you're on the big generator, and then you run the small generator when you check your load, and then when there's nobody around, nobody is complaining, you then use the inverter, and then you go around, your manager or community manager possibly goes around and tell everybody to please turn off the light. If you're not using it, please turn it off. Our inverter is overloaded. You know, that kind of, you're familiar with what I'm saying if you run one. You know, because that's how you sort of see how you run an effective environment. So inverter technology, equipment, access control. And here you could have people who, in terms of access control, build access remotely. In terms of building, we're looking for software developers, for instance, who will build products that are specifically for co-working spaces, where you use this apps to monitor your membership, to do access to the office at midnight, if you have an access code, if you have an access pass, by just scanning. So the possibilities are really endless. in this space. Now, if you go from here and you look at the operation, these operators are required, the service providers that can support these co-working spaces to make them lean and add value to members and drive members' engagement. And this is now for people who say, you know what, I'm not in this sort of like building design space, but I'm in the service space. The service people, this is for you. Basic operations like cleaning services, facility management, access system, power. We could have entrepreneurs now who are working with co-working spaces to say, you know what, I can deliver power to you without you buying generators. Because in the next 10 years in Nigeria, you will possibly have as much co-working spaces you have here as possibly the entire Europe together. You know, because of the way it's going in terms of the rate, the rate is going in Nigeria. So you see so many for services. You could look at that and say, this is what I want to do. Cleaning service. I said to somebody, why do you need to have 10 cleaners from morning till evening in your environment? You have a company that provides cleaning service in the morning, and then they go away and they do that every morning, and then you're left with just 2 or 3 that will do the maintenance work throughout the whole day as the day is going on. So that brings your cost down. That controls your cash. You control your cash flow better, so that people who will need to service that area as well. You might see it now and say, well, how many are days 70? I'm not sure, but you need to position yourself for when they are 700, not 70. So co-working operators, you have billing, you have space management, membership plans for you in terms of people that are operating co-working spaces. To drive membership engagement, it is important that billing process is as simple, as straightforward as possible. Space management, this is one thing that we don't do very well here. In terms of how our spaces are designed, they have to be designed in such a way that when people walk in, they can see that almost every square meter is doing something. Do you know what I'm saying? As opposed to a big space somewhere that is not functioning well. Members plans and events and activities, things that are, and you will see when we start to talk about the things that drive co-working spaces and make them the community that they should be. Member services, advisory services. Now this is very important. For an environment like Nigeria where we know very strongly that people need support. I mean, we run a program, a monthly program called the Boardroom. The Boardroom is where, at our co-working space, where we bring entrepreneurs in. We get hundreds of applications every month, and we pick about 20 entrepreneurs to come in just because we want to keep it small and impact them. And we bring speakers to just come in and just people who have been there, done that, who have built businesses. So the last month we have Tunde Koinde, the former MD of Jumia and founder of Ace now, and Ace and Lydia. And next month is Mark Essien, hotels.ng, and the month after, and people like that to sort of show entrepreneurs how do you actually build businesses. I always say that revenue is exaggerated, profit is a hype, cash is king. It is important that every business understands that if your co-working environment is able to provide business support services beyond just the physical infrastructure, it has a very good chance of going fast. Support services, virtual assistance, financial services, and all of these are services that you provide for your members. Community management, content, apps, tech, platforms, community interactions, events. These things are very important for keeping the environment extremely active. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there are hubs that are set up specifically for a specific purpose. You have some that are tech-driven. And if you're building a tech product or a tech service, or that possibly should be maybe where you should be looking at. There are some that are hybrid. You want to be in a space where every business is, and you want to be able to connect with every business. If you're running a legal company, you're a lawyer to everybody potentially. If you're a consultant, you're a consultant to pretty much everyone. And then there are services, SME services that can also support co-working spaces. And this is where, at this point, for our official service providers for this event, please, as I call their name, and this is why it's so important that we recognize them, because they are also important for your platforms and for the businesses that you run. For DIY Law is a great example of a company that provides services for startups, SMEs in that space. Can we put our hands together for DIY Law for the work that they are doing in that space? You have Accountier for people who don't want to run expensive accounting system. Accountier is a very nimble platform for you to run your accounting system on. Fourth Canvas, they design awesome graphics. So for you, that could be, these are services that support businesses. They will support your business directly, and of course, if you're an operator or you're in the space, and then we have Wi-Fi here. It's going to be announced at some point, so you can engage and get free Wi-Fi here. Free Wi-Fi courtesy of wifi.com.ng. Let's put our hands together for wifi.com.ng. So from Accountier to wifi.com.ng to all the different services, and of course, you then have financial services financial providers that ensure that funds are available when they are needed. So you need a short-term loan. You need an expansion strategy or an expansion fund. Who do you talk to? They say that banks in Nigeria don't lend to SMEs, they don't support startups, they don't support businesses. But we're happy to have a very good bank who has been very supportive of some of the things that we're trying to do, including today's event, Fidelity Bank. Let's put our hands together for Fidelity Bank. They've done a lot of work in the SME space. So Fidelity, so all of these different services support co-working spaces. So, and then service providers, beyond all of this, you have security outfits, interior decor, like I said earlier on, and all of that. Policy drivers. You can see that as an industry, as I'm defining it, is beyond just a space in Yaba. It's now beyond just a space in Ikeja or a space in Lekki or a space in Maitama, Abuja, or in Asokoro or somewhere in Kano, or it's beyond that now. You now see an entire value chain of where different things could be going on at different times. And all of this, you can then go to corporates, project teams and innovators like Microsoft, who would take some of their teams and say, you know what, we don't want you to be in our space. We want you to go and develop a new product, and you go and do it outside of our immediate space in a co-working environment. So that there are corporate organizations that leverage on that. They are also partners. There are also people that can use your space or that can use your services if you provide one. I'll give you an example. A company called Pay with Capture, which you possibly know very well, had a partnership with Access Bank, and Access Bank didn't want them to be in their space. So, for instance, they want them to be in their space because they wanted them to be independent and wanted them to run a full-fledged company without necessarily being tied to a bank. What did they do? They set up a space at Vineyard. So for their entire 18 months or 2-year period when they were building that platform, it was out of a co-working space where a team of about 25 people were working out from. Do you see so that's what is happening. Corporate organizations, Shell can decide that, I'm going to move a team out to so space for them to work out of there. You have investors and financial services. You have SME value proposition, incubator programs running out of co-working spaces. Now, let me talk about this slightly, because one of the beautiful things about co-working spaces, which is what we'll look at today in the panel, getting funding through co-working spaces, is the funding aspect of it. Because you can, by just being in a co-working space for a year or two, somebody there has identified you as a potential business that is ready for funding. They've seen your record, they've seen how you do business. So if there are possibilities for investors to come to that space or come to Nigeria for investment, or even angel investors, you will be on the list. So or there are some that even run their own internal incubation or accelerator program, where by the time you get on, you do tickets. They do tickets from about $10,000 to $20,000, and it pushes the agenda of that particular co-working space because they want to ensure that they build enterprises and they build platforms. So what does this mean in terms of impact on this environment? The impact could be as wide as possible. It could be as far-reaching as you can imagine. From remote working, literally working from anywhere, to working to the rise of digital nomads. So there are people now who are essentially nomads, they don't want to be in a traditional space. That's why you go to a restaurant, you see somebody on a laptop somewhere with an earpiece, and you're wondering, what's that guy doing? You leave and come back in the evening, he's still there. And all he does is he buys a cup of coffee and donuts, and is there for 6-7 hours working away, because that's the future of work. That's the way people want to work going forward. And all of these things we're talking about is largely linked to the way people want to work going forward, the future of work. So it's also the impact is also skills development. There are now new skills that are required for managing co-working spaces. Community managers, what used to be front desk people before, or receptionists. They are no longer receptionists. They are now community managers, because they are managing communities of businesses. They are managing people. They are, so they are, what do they do as community managers? So there are new skills that need to be developed. So for people who are here, who are saying, you know what, I'm not really a service provider. Neither am I an entrepreneur yet, but I just really want to work in an environment like this and just create value and help make it a successful place to work. Maybe community management is your area. There are some who are business managers who have to understand the numbers, understand occupancy levels, understand, and maybe that's your own role. Key into this and work in one before you begin the next phase of your own journey. So job creation and employment, of course, that's what that leads to once skills are developed. Forex inflow from freelancers. Now, we put this there, and it's quite an interesting one. That if there are freelancers that, for instance, come into Nigeria to come and freelance around there because they believe that there are opportunities here, that there will be opportunities for forex to flow into the economy, because they live in this environment. They believe that there's value that they can add to this environment. And so for us, the value chain is so long, and I don't think that we have fully discovered the possibilities in terms of what can happen, because this industry is just about 15 years or so old. And it has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. The biggest co-working space provider in the world is valued at over $10 billion. And so when you look at what can happen when we really explore, and somebody was asking, why are you doing this? If it's an industry, why don't you build it quietly and just be expanding quietly? Nigerians, they'll just be hearing all your ideas. They'll just go and implement it. I said, lovely. I just believe that the more we have, the better we are. I just believe that the more, if somebody is able to do it and crash the rate for you to use it in Ikeja, or use it in Yanopaja, or use it in Kano, I think the better for us as entrepreneurs. Don't you think so? I just believe that, for instance, if we don't have the capacity to go to some places, and somebody is sitting here and you're from, and I know it's from the registration, we know there are people here from Akwa Ibom, there are people here from as far as Meduguri, we know people are from all over. We might not have the capacity to go from Lagos to those places, but if you're there and you're creating it, and you need us to support, I believe that's the way you build a nation, because of collaboration. So please go from here and steal my ideas. So but just make sure that when you take it, they're not copyrighted. They're not. Take it and let's try and see what possibilities there are. Let's try and see how can we possibly use this to drive development in Nigeria. How can we possibly use this to drive economic growth in Nigeria, to drive job creation, wealth creation? How can we use this to ensure that we are not disconnected from the digital era that we're in? How can we ensure that, because if you look at it, there are now more in the next, by 2050, there will be more millennials living in the world at any time in the history of mankind. Of course, millennials are from 1985 thereabout to now. So you realize that these people are young, they are hungry. So how do we create an environment that can absorb them? The more ideas that we can take out of here, and trust me, there are a lot of speakers that will talk about this, and that will share both locally and internationally what is going on, global trends. Let's take all of it and look at what you can do with them, and look at how you can use it to shape your immediate environment. And if you're service providers, look at what service can I provide. If I'm an investor, how do I key into this? I'm a media representative, or I have a media platform. How do I ensure that I'm using my platform to advocate for this, and using my platform to amplify it? Because at the end of the day, this is about entrepreneurship. That's what it's about. It's about young Nigerians building things, and literally, I find that the most interesting reason why some of us started some of this, is simply infrastructural gap. If you speak to anybody that has started it, they will tell you that they either wanted to start something else and they couldn't find how, and then they felt that, okay, let me just start this first and then start the other thing. So that's the idea. So please, let's go away. There's so much content that will come out of here. I'm hoping that we'll see some of the amazing things that the international audience is thinking about Nigeria, what they are saying about us. They are watching. Leanne from Coworker.com. I mean, she has some incredible, in terms of her experience and what she feels can happen in this space. So all of this will be useful for people that are currently running spaces, who are looking to expand as far as you can. you know, people that are looking to start. Let's just ensure that in terms of global standard, in terms of best practices, we do it right and we do it well and we set a very high standard. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.